So I am getting ready to mix my foam concoction. This is 2 parts part B and 1 part A. So I've got 10 cups of part B foam, and I got 5 cups of the part A rosin and hardener. And this is the mixing tool that I use. And I had to look a few different places before I got this exact paddle mixer, because for this application, this is really the best mixing tool there is. And I've got my brown pigment for pigmenting this foam to get it to where it matches this color almost. And I have covered over the expansion hole a little bit, because when the foam is ready to be poured in, you have to pour it in fast and secure this expansion hole fast. And I've cut a little bit of an expansion hole in here. Actually, I'm going to cut a little bit more, give it a cross pattern so that the foam can rise up. And you have to staple this over quickly, because it gives it a bit of a backstop up here so that the foam hardens and doesn't just bleed right out. So I'm going to start mixing this foam and pigmenting it. And you have to mix the foam quite well. And I'm going to add some of the brown pigment to this. And I get the pigment from the same place that I get the foam, because it's made by, again, Smooth On Corp. And so we'll mix a little bit of this brown pigment into the foam to give it some color. And the amount of pigment you use depends on the nature of the target. So this is a bit of a sandy brown color, and it's close to what the original target is, so I'm just going to give it a little bit more pigment. And that way it'll turn a little bit darker. just got rid of the excess foam on the mixing paddle. And so there's the base, part B. Now I'm just wondering if I'm going to switch this part B to a larger bucket before I pour the part A in, if that'll make it easier to mix, because 5 cups of part A might reach to the top. So I think I'm going to go with my other mixing vessel here so that there is enough room and enough capacity in here to get a good mix. Because once you pour the part A into the part B, you have to mix it up fairly quickly and try and get as good a mix as you can. And again, the pot life on this stuff is 60 seconds only. So you want to get enough mixing done before it starts to heat up and expand, because it will start to expand again within 60 seconds. So I'm going to put it into this bucket and let it and drain it into the bucket as much as possible so that I'm not losing any of this part A or part B mixed up stuff. I'm just going to get rid of the dust inside here with a soft towel. There we go. Get rid of as much dust as I can in there. Yeah, because if I pour the part A into here, it's going to be too high in this mixing vessel. So I'm going to pour it all into this other bucket so I have room to mix it. And I'll just leave it like that to drain out as much as possible so that I'm not losing any part B, or as little as possible. And that way, again, I have more room for mixing. And I'm going to have to scoop out a little bit of this part B out of this jar, out of this container. So I'm going to go grab a piece of sheet metal and use it for a bit of a spatula. So here's my spatula. So I can scrape this stuff so that I'm not losing much of the foam due to clinging to the sides. Because if I lose too much clinging to the sides, my dimensions and proportions are not going to be as accurate as you would like them to be, because it's a little bit forgiving, but not really forgiving. So I'm getting as much as I can from the interior of this bucket. So you can see the reason for the cardboard. So because I've lost a little bit of volume of the part B with the mixing here, I'm going to use slightly less than 5 cups of the part A for the mix. Try and get as much out as we can. that. And now, with this added bucket, then I have enough capacity in the bucket so that I can pour the part A in and still have room to do the final mixing properly. Again, we use the same paddle mixer to make sure that the mix is good. And then once I've mixed it up, I have to pour it into the cavity quick and then poly over quickly with the poly and the staples to get a barrier so that, again, the foam doesn't bleed out everywhere. And while it's expanding in the cavity, after you've poured the foam and covered it over, I may have to push down on the target itself so that the foam does not bleed out the bottom where the backstop is, and kind of move it around a bit so that it fills to the perimeter of this cavity on the top. Because last thing you want is this perimeter showing. You want the foam to expand just beyond the perimeter so that when it comes time for shaping, you don't have any gaps here. Now, the expansion ratio on this particular foam says 2.5 to 1 expansion ratio, but in my experience, it has been close, in this particular application, it has been closer to about 2 to 1. So that's why I'm using 10 cups of part B and 5 cups of part A so that I have enough. And it's better to have too much foam than not enough. Because if you don't have enough, you're going to be trying to mix up another batch of foam quickly to fill in the rest of it. And that way you don't have the same consistency because it's a new batch. So it's best to do this with one batch of foam, and again, use too much foam versus not enough. So 15 cups of mixture with this thickness of target, and I think it will have enough to expand all the way and give a bit of rise here, and that way it will fill in all the cracks, all the crevices, and be nice and dense. So now I'm going to pour in my part A and mix it up real quick, and then pour it into the target. Just get rid of some of this foam on the mixer. Check that my drill is still nice and tight, and really the corded drills are better than the cordless drills, unless you've got a really good cordless drill, because the cordless ones, some of them don't have enough strength and enough power to mix this foam properly. And as you can see, we've got plenty of part B, and it is mixed up with the pigment, and the color is a pretty close match. All right, so point of no return about to come up. I've got 5 cups of part A, 10 cups of part B with the pigment. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that with the expansion ratio of this into this target, that there will be enough. So I'm going to move the tripod a little closer, get a little higher, and put it right there. And get to the point of no return. Once you start this, mixing the foam together, you have to do it quickly and you have to do it properly. All right, so we will start mixing the foam together. And you have to have this exterior cavity ready in order to poly it over quickly and staple it into place quickly. All right, are we ready? Got that. Everything is ready. And hopefully this goes well. We'll see. And I'm going to put my mixing gloves on. And I'm going to put my safety glasses on as well. Because the last thing you want really is some of this stuff getting into your eyes. It would not be pleasant. And this stage of doing these repairs does not require anything more really than safety goggles and gloves. When it comes time to shape the target with the grinder, however, that's when I put on the thick paper coveralls and the respirator, as well as eye protection, because when you're shaping this foam, it's as fine as drywall dust. And you really don't want to be breathing it in because the mixed foam is somewhat toxic. All right. There we go. Put on the other gloves. There we go. After the pour has been done and it is expanded, I leave the target like that for at least half an hour before I start the baking process. That way it's pretty much set and expanded as much as it's going to expand. All right, so here we go. Point of no return. As much of the part A as possible. And remember, the clock is ticking. So now, gotta mix. We gotta mix well, and we gotta mix quick. It's going to start to expand here shortly. Okay, there we go. That off. Let that. Okay, now we got the expanded foam, and we pour it in. And so far we don't have any bleed through the bottom. And it's pouring in, and it will start to expand shortly. And I'm holding the target down. And I don't see any bleeding yet. So hopefully it starts to rise up on the wall, interior walls of the target. I don't see any bleeding, so hopefully I've done the backstop well. And the foam is starting to expand on the inside. So we'll get the bucket, Get the stapler ready and staple in the barrier because it's starting to climb up the interior walls of the target. And, oh, looks like it's expanding well. Looks like it's expanding very well. We're going to get good coverage to the circumference. Oh, that's very nice. It's expanding exactly as it should. And it's coming up higher. And I'm tipping it a bit so that it expands to the edge of the whole target. See that? It's rising very nicely, rising to the edges of the circumference here. Just getting it over more to my right here so that it has reached the edges of the target, of the hole. So this is good expansion, really good. I'm just going to put some more staples in there. So it holds it in. This is the expansion that you want. You want it to come up just like this. And that way it holds in place. And I don't have any bleeding going on out the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to leave this for at least half an hour. As you can see, the expansion hole here, that's exactly what we want. There's enough of a stable barrier here that it won't loosen as it expands. And now it is getting warm. And that's exactly the chemical reaction that's supposed to happen. The hotter it is, the denser the foam will be, and the better curing it's going to be. So it's a good thing I switched to this bucket instead of using the other one, because the other one would not have had enough room and it would not have been as good for mixing, especially when there's this much foam to be mixed. Smaller targets, you have to see what mixing vessel is going to do the trick. But with the 15 cups of the 10 cups of part B and the 5 cups of part A, looks like I got the proportions just right. Just right. This is a learning process. The thicker targets, I have had ones where I haven't used enough foam and I've had to mix up more foam quickly. And thankfully they turned out all right. But you have to estimate as best possible on how much finished product you're going to need. So in my estimation, this product or this target required 30 cups of finished product with a 2-to-1 expansion ratio. And like I said, looks like I got the proportions just right, so that it's not huge this way and it filled in all right to the circumference of the target and filled out nicely. So I'm going to leave this target for half an hour, and then after that half an hour I'm going to peel off the poly, peel off the backstop, get rid of all the staples, and set him up in the baking chamber to do a 4-hour bake on this foam repair. Because the thicker the target, the more baking you're going to need to help it cure properly and get really, really good consistency. So when I have given this the half hour and start to peel off the poly and the backstop and everything, then I'll start filming again. And while this guy is baking, I'm going to I think while he's baking, I will work on one of the other targets, probably the mousse insert, to get it cored out and get it ready. This is nice and hot. Yes, very nice and hot. So it is baking and curing, or curing and expanding, and it's already getting hard. So this is exactly what the proportions you want, and the expansion ratio and the amount of foam. Because if it's too much out this way, you've got a lot of rough cutting to do before you can even bake. Whereas this, there's only a little bit of rough cutting that's going to need to be done before he hits the baking chamber. So I will start filming again in about half an hour after this is ready to be peeled and rough cut for baking.